All right, guys, we are going to go ahead and get started with chapter 2. As we do chapter 2, I want you to think about the questions that are on Canvas. Actually, you guys have the entire packet. You made a copy of it. So go look at chapter two's questions and then start reading, okay? So if you haven't done that, you need to pause this and look at your questions first so that you know what you're looking for. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I look at the picture on the next page, the last class photo taken just before I left public school. It is marked class of 1936-37. What strikes me is all the faces not in the picture. My Jewish friends who had over the years either left voluntarily to go to Jewish schools or been forced to leave. I had wanted to stay at the school because my best friend Hans was there and he wasn't Jewish. But slowly, Hans began to find excuses for not coming over to my house, and he started to pick fights with me in the schoolyard. I always got in trouble for those fights, of course, because I was a Jew, a natural troublemaker, according to Mr. Schneider. Just thinking about Mr. Schneider gets me mad all over again. One day, soon after my 10th birthday, he called me to the front of the class. He had a measuring tape, which he flung about in the air. Jews, he cried in his shrill voice, are not equals. They never were. They bribed their way into positions of power. So, the word bribed, what does that mean? Keep that in mind because basically Mr. Schneider is saying that the Jews don't deserve to be in positions of power, that they bought their way into positions of power. They try to take over all our banks and financial institutions. They try to take over our country. We must all thank God that he sent Adolf Hitler to us, for only he has had the courage to deal with this Jewish problem. Now the Jews are no longer citizens. They have no rights. And soon they will no longer pollute our schools. Okay, so again, right there, the use of the word pollute. What is Mr. Schneider trying to say about Jews? I was torn between kicking him and throwing a desk at him, so for the moment I did nothing. He'd always been mean to me. Whenever I got an answer wrong, he'd say, "Huh, what can you expect from a Jew?" But he'd never he'd never gone on like this before. I'm sorry, you guys, there's this background noise. For some reason, my neighbor is cutting a tree, and this is the only time that I can read, so I'm sorry for that background noise. Look at it. There it goes. Ni le importa. They're supposed to be inside. Anyway, sorry. The authorities have instructed us to illustrate the inferiority of this race to you students in this way, Mr. Schneider continued. True Aryans have specific head measurements. Oh my gosh. Mr. Schneider is about to do something to Daniel. I already know. What did he have in his hand at the beginning of the chapter? He had a measuring tape. And now he's talking about head measurements. He's going to measure Daniel's head. Before I knew it, he had the tape around my head. He quickly marked it and held it up triumphantly to the class. You see? Inferior species. Head too small. No room for brains. A close relative to the vermin in our gutters. That was it. I could take it no more. Good, I exclaimed, because I'd hate to be like you. And then I kicked him. Everyone in the class gasped. Leave this room, Mr. Schneider screamed, hitting me around the head and shoulders. Go straight to the principal's office. I'll leave this room and I'll never come back, I screamed as I tried to duck the blows. I went straight to Father's store and I pleaded with him to take me out of that school. The next day, both Erica and I started in the Jewish school about 10 blocks away. This next picture shows me outside my new school with Erica and Uncle Peter. Father took this picture. It is dated April of 1937. It's amazing to look at it and to realize how little I understood then. I didn't care that I'd been virtually forced out of my own school. I was thrilled at the idea of never seeing Mr. Schneider again, and delighted that Uncle Peter would be my new teacher. Uncle Peter had been fired from his teaching job because he was Jewish. That's why he was now teaching at the Jewish school. Not only him, all the Jewish professors from the university had been fired. So we had very talented, knowledgeable teachers. It wasn't as much fun getting into trouble. The teachers looked at me with such disappointment when I did something stupid that I eventually stopped. And I started to enjoy myself. I discovered that with a good teacher, school could actually be interesting. I look at this picture of the three of us smiling in front of the Jewish school, and I realize that it was then that my life really began to change. I remember running home to tell Mother all about my first day at my new school. Something in her face made me stop as I chattered on about my new schoolmates, how good it was to have friends again, and what a good teacher Uncle Peter was. "What's the matter?" I asked. "What's the matter?" she replied, and suddenly her eyes blazed with fury. "I'll tell you what the matter is. Our family goes back 1,000 years, and yet you aren't German enough to go to public school? How dare they? That criminal Hitler isn't good enough to carry your books." I was so shocked, I didn't reply. Mother was always so calm, so quiet. She never got mad. "Don't be mad, Mother," I said. "I like it there." "I know you do, Daniel," she said, and I saw tears in her eyes. "But that's not the point." So then what is the point, guys? Why is Daniel's mom so upset? Think about it. Then she sat down at the kitchen table and looked so sad I didn't know what to do. Slowly I backed away and went back to my room. When I saw her at supper, she was back to her calm, quiet self and never mentioned it to me again. Uncle David moved to the United States that summer. A few years earlier, the Nuremberg laws had been passed. Laws that were designed to protect German blood and honor. Jews were not allowed to marry Germans. Uncle David was engaged to a Christian woman, and they left Germany so they could marry. Those laws also took away citizenship from all Jews and their right to vote. Uncle David wanted us to join him in the United States, but my parents didn't want to leave Frankfurt. Still, lots of their friends were leaving. Every day, Father announced a new name at the dinner table. "You know the Cohens down the street? On their way to England. The Perlmans, who have the clothing store near ours? Australia." Mother would shake her head, and then Father would say, "They'll be back." Still, it felt to me like everything was changing too fast, and for the worse. It seemed there was a law for everything, most of them forbidding Jews to do the things I most enjoyed. We couldn't go to concerts or eat at restaurants or even swim in public pools. Big signs were posted at the pools saying, "No Jews," or "Dogs allowed." Still, I try to convince myself that it wasn't that bad. My mother cooked better than any restaurant chef, and my friends and I played soccer after school. Very quickly, the Jewish community banded together and organized its own Jewish cultural centers. Uncle Walter was fired from the Frankfurt Symphony, so he joined the Jewish Symphony. We even had our own community swimming pool. I made new friends and I joined a sports club sponsored by a Zionist organization. Zionists believed that Jews needed their own homeland. So, along with martial arts and soccer, we also had lectures on how we would create the perfect Jewish state in Palestine. By the time I was 11, I'd almost forgotten life had ever been different. One night, though, I was reminded how different things really were. My friends Joshua and Mordecai and I were walking home from the Zionist Sports Club at around 9 o'clock. We had been practicing martial arts all evening, but we weren't tired. A fresh layer of snow lay on the ground, and we were feeling happy and full of energy. We threw snowballs and chased one another down the street. We had paused at the street corner to say goodbye when 4 boys in Hitler Youth uniforms came up behind us. Perhaps they had followed us, I don't know. These were the perfect Aryans, children training to be future leaders of Hitler's Germany, the Germany that had no place for Jews. "Hey, Jew boy," one called, "didn't your mother ever teach you to wash?" "Yours should wash your mouth out with soap," I replied. "Why, you—" He turned red. Couldn't believe a Jew had actually answered him back. And then suddenly, they were all over us. But even at their 4 to our 3, they were no match for us. The blue-eyed blonde who'd taunted me was soon flat on his stomach, his face in the snow. "Give up?" I asked. "No," he screamed, struggling. I sat on him hard and pushed his face further into the snow. "Now?" Yes, let me up." He scrambled up and raced off with the others. The 3 of us laughed and joked about it, but as I lay in bed that night, I knew that none of us had found it fun or funny. We were separate now from everyone else in Frankfurt, separate and somehow less important, not as good as the pure, real Germans. And everywhere there were posters, exhibits, and articles that described to the German people how terrible Jews were. I knew I was no different from them, and yet sometimes I wondered. In fact, I took Erica to see a newsreel about one of those exhibits. So guys, you're gonna want to look up that word newsreel so that you know where he took her. I look at the next picture. Little Erica standing with her violin, staring seriously into the camera. Under it is written June 1938. Erica was 9, a little mouse. She had brown wavy hair and brown eyes and a little nose that she would rub when she was worried. I'm going to stop right there. Here, Daniel gives us a description of Erica, his little sister, and he calls her a little mouse. Now think about the qualities of a mouse and why he would describe her as a mouse. It's not because he doesn't like her, so it's not like he's calling her like a rat or a mouse or like an animal. Okay? Think about the qualities of a mouse and why Daniel would describe her as a mouse. Uncle Walter had begun teaching her violin when she was only 4 years old because she'd begged and begged and begged him. From the moment she attended her first symphony to hear her Uncle Walter play, all she wanted to do was learn the violin. She is so much like Mother, quiet, calm, but she's also terribly shy. Everything she feels, she expresses in her music. Shortly after this picture was taken, Erica and I went to the movies. I wanted to go because I'd heard that before the feature, they were showing a newsreel about a public exhibition called The Eternal Jew. I believe this is on one of your questions, which was coming to Frankfurt. This exhibition was created for one purpose only, to convince German people of how disgusting Jews were. I just had to see it. I wanted to know what they were saying about us. So let's stop right there and let's see if we can make a connection to Daniel. So, most of us are Latino in our class. If there was a movie or if there was a documentary that showed that Latinos were bad for the United States, would you guys want to watch it? Do you think you would go to the movies to watch this commercial, documentary, short film on how Latinos are bad for America? I don't know that I would want to watch it. But Daniel wanted to see this, the eternal Jew. So he took Erica. Let's see. It says, I wanted to know what they were saying about us. I was looking after Erica, so I dragged her along. She was devastated by it. The newsreel described what was in the exhibit, a picture of Jews as slave drivers, thieves, and madmen. Unlike the upstanding, honorable German people, I tried to laugh at it, but inside I was terrified. Erica wept silently until I was so guilt-stricken at having taken her that we got up and left. Auntie Leah waved to us from across the street. Daniel, Erica, I've been looking everywhere for you. Come on. Erica and I hurried over to her, relieved there was someone to take us home. I felt like everyone on that street knew we were Jewish, that they would gladly rip us to shreds or try to stamp on us as if we were bugs. Mother and father were furious with me when they heard where I had taken Erica, and I was sent to my room for the rest of the day and evening. That night, I had a dream. In the dream, Erica and I went to the movies and saw the horrible newsreel, just as we had that afternoon. When we came out, Auntie Leah called to us, her voice shrill. Come on. Suddenly, someone on the street yelled, Hey, I know her. She lives near me. She's a Jew. Let's get her. Teach her a lesson. And then the people on the street moved as one as they went after her. Jew, filthy vermin. They punched her and kicked her and then began to rip her. Then they began ripping her clothes off. Run, Erica, run, I screamed. And I pushed her away. Erica ran. I threw myself into the mob, screaming, Leave her alone, leave her alone. I punched and kicked, but they punched and kicked back. Finally, Auntie Leah grabbed me, covered me up, threw her body over me, and went limp. Slowly, the crowd lost its momentum and began to disperse. Auntie Leah got up. Her clothes were in tatters. There was a terrible gash along her cheekbone, and 2 bottom teeth were gone. Daniel, are you all right? She whispered. She was only worried about me. I started to cry. I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry. It wasn't your fault, she said. Perhaps she thought I was apologizing for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. How could she know I was sorry, that I'd never liked her, and now this has happened to her, and I still didn't know if I liked her, but I knew that no human being deserved to be treated that way, whether I liked her or not. I kept repeating how sorry I was, and I took off my shirt and gave it to her. Guys, I'm going to stop right there because it's starting to sound real, but you got to remember, he's dreaming, okay? This did not happen. This is a dream. Father and mother came with Erica, and then mother started to cry, and I started to scream because I was scared. And how could this happen? Wasn't this Frankfurt, my home? and I screamed and screamed, Daniel, Daniel, wake up, you're having a nightmare. My mother was holding me tight. It's all right, sweetheart, you're safe. Nothing's going to hurt you. It's that movie, she scolded. No wonder you're having nightmares. The next day, Father called a family conference to discuss what should be done about leaving or staying in Germany. Maybe he had started to realize that children were going to grow up in fear, and he didn't want that for us. Uncle Aaron had announced he had applied for visas to England, and and that they would leave the moment the visas came through. He said we should all do the same. Now listen, Uncle Peter said. For 1,000 years, Jews have survived. I can't say that word. Pogroms? I'm sorry, guys. I'll look it up and pronounce it better for you guys next time. Survived pogroms, ghettos, and anti-Jewish laws. And we'll survive this. It's just more of the same. It'll pass. Maybe, Mother said slowly. This is different. Ruth, Father said to my mother, if it is different, we have to do something. It's time to think about going. David can sponsor us to go to the United States. Tomorrow, you should go and fill out applications for our visas. My mother nodded her head, and she did go the next day. But Uncle Peter was wrong that it would all just pass away. He was arrested a few days later for having pleaded guilty 6 years early to 2 parking violations. He was taken away to Dachau concentration camp. Auntie Leah stared into nothingness as she told Mother what had happened. He got those tickets when Bridget was born. I was in labor and we couldn't find a parking place, so I screamed at him, "Park illegally! We'll get a ticket, so what? Should I have the baby in the car instead?" Oh, God, help us. What is happening? Oh, God, help us. What is happening? And that is the end of chapter 2, guys. This book is going to start getting a little intense, a little sad. So, yeah, just bear with me. All right, guys, now it's time to go answer your questions. I really miss you. Have fun.